This is Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Ron Rohde, Kentucky Afield's first host back in 1953. Now, I'm proud to present Charlie Baglan.
What means Kentucky more than a horse? Out of several 100,000, that answer is easy. Deer. We go inside outdoors for a look at deer season. How many? How big? How often? And why is deer hunting growing in popularity as it is? My guest knows, and he'll answer the questions. Gabe Jenkins with the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife heads the white-tailed deer program for the state. He is ours for the hour, next on Kentucky Afield Radio.
Deer in the headlights. Watch out, Mr. Deer.
Singing with your kids in the car is one way to keep deer hazard season in mind. And should a deer catch your headlights, flash those lights, sound your horn, break its concentration to scurry it along.
There's one.
And where there's one, there may be 2 or 3 more. Deer hazard season runs through November, so be wise behind the wheel while nature runs its course. A message from Fish and Wildlife and the Kentucky Office of Highway Safety.
I have never seen anything like this.
I can't believe I waited so long.
What will you say?
My heart was pounding.
This is Kentucky, it's deer season, and it's
outstanding.
Over 50 Boone and Crockett deer last year. Modern gun season opens November 12th, with archery season open now.
Yeah.
What do you say?
I can't believe I made the shot.
Get your license and deer permit now, and take aim on the thrill at fw.ky.gov. Welcome to Kentucky Afield Radio. My name's Charlie Baglan. Kentucky's modern gun deer season is fast approaching. It is the second Saturday in November, November 12th, the single biggest season of the year for the control of the state's massive, growing deer herd. We talk about it this hour with Gabe Jenkins. He heads the Kentucky Deer and Elk Program for the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Gabe, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Charlie.
Antler restrictions.
Yep.
So what's the deal now with the new telecheck?
Okay, good question. Appreciate you asking. The biggest thing is we've added some questions on telecheck that ask about the number of points and the spread of that animal. And we've had a lot of talk, a lot of discussion about what's Fish and Wildlife doing with this. Are we going for antler restrictions? Is this something that we're going to progress to in the future? And the best and clearest way I can tell you is absolutely not. This is a way for us to collect data. Telecheck and checking deer is a process for us to report on the harvest, to get an estimate of the harvest, and to make better predictions in the future. With this information that we are asking, we're now able to get age data from these deer. And so I have a clear picture of what that antler looks like. I can take that data and then figure out how old those bucks were. Now I'm going to get from telecheck the number of male fawns that are killed, the number of yearlings, and the number of adults. And that's what we really need to better monitor and better predict the population size in all of our counties. So it's strictly a data gathering mechanism, data gathering tool.
Well, there's some people out there that are going to say bull.
Right.
You're talking out of both sides of your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
All right, here's my argument. Why wouldn't you? What's wrong with antler restrictions?
I think it depends on your outlook. Everybody has a different view or they hunt for different reasons. Some hunt because they enjoy it. Some hunt because for the meat. Some are trophy hunters that like to shoot big deer. You know, me sitting in my seat as deer and elk coordinator, I think about we provide opportunity. And, you know, if that person wants to go out and shoot a spike or a 6-point and they're happy with that and that is a trophy in their eye, heck yeah, that's what we want to provide. Now, if you want to be the one who passes on all these deer and wants to shoot a 5.5-year-old deer, regardless of what antlers look like, there are a lot of folks that are looking for those older age class deer. And then we have some that are just wanting that Boone and Crockett, that 160, 170-inch antler. And that's why they hunt. And those are all fine, but for me as an agency and how we do things on a statewide basis, I think we stick away from that and we let the hunters and the managers manage their properties the way they see fit.
I think the word you said a sentence or two ago was happy. You want happy hunters.
Right.
And if I wanted to go out and hunt my deer, I don't want to have to be worried about, do I have to let this deer pass?
Mm-hmm.
That just seems restrictive.
Right.
Counter to what you're wanting to do. You want to harvest deer, especially you want to harvest more does. And I've seen studies that say antler restrictions aren't just to build bigger bucks. It's to harvest more does.
It can be. If you have an antler restriction, say 15 inches, it's a pretty common thing that, you see all these deer that are smaller than 15 inches. I'm a little nervous to shoot something that's close, so I might just go shoot an antlerless deer and be happy. Going back to the restrictions, I think those are important, and they work well in states that have a more than one buck limit, where you can shoot multiple bucks. And then where we're a one buck limit state, if you're going to shoot that deer, you're happy with that. So you're not going to go out and shoot 3 and 4 or 5 small antler bucks and really impact the population on our younger age class deer. So I think antler restrictions work in some places, in some states where you can shoot multiple bucks, but we are a one buck state, and I really don't see the need for it because we limit the number of buck take by that way. When you look at our harvest data from the 70s on forward, we have seen a pretty sharp decline in the number of yearlings harvested in our harvest. So that percent yearlings declining, indicating to us that our hunters are recognizing those deer, passing on them, letting them get to that 2 and 3 and 4 year old age classes, which is where they're mature, and it's really hard to pass up a 2-year-old 8-point here or a 2-year-old deer in Kentucky.
So hunters are actually policing this themselves.
Correct.
Sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading on the web, and I'm sure you're familiar with the college professor from West Virginia University, David Samuel.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually for this. Makes me wonder, though, how good a shape is West Virginia's deer population in?
Well, their states, it's very different than Kentucky. Habitat completely. They're a mountainous state, ridge and valley state on the very far eastern end. So habitat is completely different. I will say that West Virginia leads the nation in deer vehicle collisions. And in most cases, they have a lot of deer, and they struggle to harvest enough deer to bring that population down. So that's about all I can really say.
Dr. Samuel says this, and I just want to get your comment because he makes a decent argument. Says, one, if you have antler restrictions, you can harvest more does, and thus you can reduce your deer population overall. 2, you can reduce your deer populations, you get healthier forests. If you have healthier forest, the deer, both bucks and does, have better nutrition, better forage. If you have better forage and restrictions on harvesting the smaller bucks, that means bigger bucks and a healthier herd. Put all that together, happier hunters.
I think in some places, yes, but it's easy. It's not. He's looking at one thing and pointing at another and saying it's a cause and effect relationship, and that's not necessarily the case. If you have a place that has lots of deer, if you're now letting those deer get into older age classes, you're passing on yearling deer and letting them get the 2 and 3 year olds when you should have been harvesting to try to decline that population. So, my question would be, what is the goal for that state or for that area? Is it to reduce the population, or is it to increase it? I don't think you can automatically say, well, if you have antler restrictions, people are automatically going to shoot does. I can't speak to what their doe allowance is or how they're allowed, what their bag limit is for antlerless deer. There are some people that just won't shoot does. Put antler restrictions on them, they just won't shoot that buck and won't shoot a doe. So, I don't know. They have to find what works for them, just like we have to find what works for us here in Kentucky.
I saw the QDMA map, and it looks like a lot of the states here in the east, especially down in the south, do have antler restrictions, but Kentucky was highlighted. What antler restrictions are there in place at the moment?
If you look at that map, it would be like a hybrid. So we don't have them statewide or in counties, but we have them on some of our public areas. And that's where we get that designation of having antler restrictions. On some of our WMAs or some of the federal areas that have a spread restriction, that gives us that classification on QDMA.
So you're not interested in antler restrictions in Kentucky, but if 20 years down the road this does happen, is it not the end of the world?
Right. I'm not going to say never ever, because that would be closed-minded, and I'm a biologist at heart. As a coordinator, we look at things objectively. Right now, that is not anything on our radar.
Okay, cool. And I've drilled you hard enough, and I've got you. If you were going to dance around it, you could have, but you didn't.
No, I'll go right at that one.
All right. So we started the conversation talking about telecheck, and there are some new questions that are going to be asked. What are those questions?
All right, so specifically when you go through the telecheck process and you go to select antlered animal on a deer or elk harvest, it's going to ask you the total number of points that are equal to or greater than an inch, and then it's going to ask you if the outside antler spread is 11 inches or greater or less than 11 inches. And that's it.
So they didn't want to know if it's 14 or 15 or 16. They want to know is it greater or less than 11?
Correct. So very similar to the turkey beard question for turkey hunters.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of a slot limit on bass.
Mm-hmm. We poured over the data that we have on antlers, and in Kentucky, an average year-and-a-half-old buck has an antler spread less than 11 inches, and that's where that number comes from.
So how do you know 11 inches?
You can use the ear spread. 11 inches, the nice thing about this, the animal's already dead, so you've got the animal in hand. What I'd like to tell hunters is use a piece of paper. A piece of paper is 8.5 by 11. Stick that up there. If that antler is wider than that piece of paper, it's great. If it's shorter, there you go.
Good point. We need to get to a break. More on Kentucky deer season just ahead. You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. We're back on Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Charlie Baglan talking about wildlife management today in the form of deer hunting. Deer biologist Gabe Jenkins is behind the mic, and it's a process. When you harvest a deer, you have to let Fish and Wildlife know through the telecheck system. A new question or two have been added this year, such as the spread of the antlers. Is it greater or less than 11 inches?
And number of points greater than or equal to an inch.
I'm sure that you're happy with ballpark on this.
Correct, yeah. I mean, that's fine. It just gives us an estimate of what that animal looks like.
How does all this apply to elk? Because the same extra questions in telecheck apply.
Right, so we added in the question about antler points. So when you harvest an elk, it's going to go through the same process you always do, and then they're going to ask the total number of points greater than or equal to an inch. And that's going to be both sides, and you just simply count them up. You'll estimate if you think it's an inch or not, and then simply enter that number.
How many deer seasons have you been now with the Department of Fish and Wildlife?
This will be my 10th deer season.
10th deer. And as the coordinator, second? What am I thinking?
This will really be my third deer season going in as coordinator.
Are you happy with what you're seeing?
Yeah, I'm really happy. Excited about some changes. Really taking a good hard look at a lot of things we're doing deer-wise across the state, and it's good.
He must have the best job in the world. He gets to play with deer all day. But that's a tough job.
Right.
You need to keep this as balanced and in check as you possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
Is that easier said than done?
Very much so. When you think of balancing the needs of hunters and balancing all the other constituents that we deal with as an agency, your farmers, your motorists, things like that, it's different. Lots of different people come with different views on what they think the deer population should look like, should be like. We as hunters are selfish. We want to see lots of deer and lots of big deer. On the flip side, you have farmers who, in a lot of cases, don't want the first deer. Well, how do we manage that? Encourage hunters to take more deer or less deer, and also not have lots of damage issues along the way. So it's difficult.
You have degrees in this and have 10 years experience in this for a reason. We have had some excellent harvest in the last few years, record-setting.
Mm-hmm.
If that stops, or if that slows down, what happens to the deer population?
It's pretty indicative of how many deer we have on the landscape. So if we had fantastic weather the last couple of years, which drives our deer hunters to get out and go hunt, we are a firearms-dominant state. If that firearms deer season in November, the weather is good, you're going to see a pretty good harvest. Couple that with not a lot of acorns or mass production, those deer are on the move, they're coming to feeders, they're coming to green fields, and they present themselves for opportunities for hunters to take them. So those are all things that are good. We have been setting records, and with records, there's nowhere but down usually. But, we don't like to think that way. I feel very comfortable with the data that we have, what our models are telling us. We have a lot of deer on the landscape. We have places that need that population to continue to be harvested heavily. And then we have some places in the state that we really need to see that population grow, too. So
those are going to grow on its own?
It will. We're trying to with our zone structures that we have in place to allow that population to grow. So that's kind of where we fall in setting those bag limits and season structures to either decrease, increase, or stabilize that population.
Where are our hunter numbers? Where have they been? Are they going up? Are they going down? Because if we're having record harvest, either we have more deer hunters out there or more deer presenting themselves so that there are more successful hunters.
Correct. I think when you look at hunting nationwide, there is a slight decline in hunters. Kentucky, we're a little different. We're pretty stable to slightly increasing in the number of deer hunters specifically. And I won't speak to the small game hunters or the waterfowl hunters because I really don't know. But when you look at deer hunters, deer permits sold, we're stable to increasing. We're seeing an increase in youth. We're seeing an increase in women. And that's fantastic. I'd like to see that increase and continue it to grow. So we're seeing more licensed buyers, more permits purchased here in Kentucky that's allowing for more deer to be harvested. When you look at the average successful hunter, the average hunter shoots 1.3 deer, and that number's been pretty consistent as long as I've been with the agency. So they have a tolerance of how many they're willing to shoot, and that seems to be pretty consistent.
More women, more children.
Mm-hmm.
That's sweet.
That's very awesome.
I am surprised to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that's triggering this?
Family time, a way to maybe unplug with the technology world that's hectic. It's nice to just kind of get away from that and spend some time alone or with your family and friends in the woods and get away from that. There's also a push for local farm, free-range, organic meat. And
right.
That's very popular with women, is that, they can come out and have this fantastic meat for their family, to feed their family.
Full of protein, lean, excellent taste.
Don't have to worry about antibiotics or disease or things like that. So we really are seeing a push from our urban areas and a lot of non-traditional folks getting into hunting that are getting into hunting for those reasons, and that's fantastic.
I hope the trend continues. I really do.
Yes, me too. I think it would be an awesome to revitalize deer hunting for meat hunting. I mean, it kind of got away from that in the last 10 or 15 years, and we've been swinging back towards that as people are going strictly to hunt for meat, and that's really neat.
I saw an article you were quoted in recently about deer in Kentucky with a population number around 800,000 and change.
Correct.
If the population of deer hunters in the state continues to grow, that helps keep that number in check. And I also heard a number you want to remove every year, about a third of the population.
Yeah, that's about right. You want to have a stable or stabilization in your population. About a third is what you want to try to harvest or be removed off the landscape.
You had a 46-question survey that just ended. When was that, September?
Yeah, we run that deer survey in September.
Talk to me about the survey. What kind of information did you glean?
So we were really excited about this. We were long overdue to talk to our deer hunters. This was something that I've been working on for nearly 2 years to get this out. The last deer survey was done in 2001. And we have not talked to our hunters to see what they think, how their seasons are going, what their expectations are, if we're meeting them, if we need to change some of our mindsets and the way we do deer management in the state. So this survey was a lot of outside-the-box questions, and we were really gauging people's thoughts and opinions on different things.
What did you want to know specifically? What was the one thing you wanted to know?
Man, there were so many good things in that survey. I can't say that I would pick one. There are a lot of questions about additional doe harvest that I'm really personally interested in. We struggle to get antlerless deer harvested in a lot of places in the state. And how do we encourage hunters? How do we provide more opportunity where hunters are more willing to shoot does? And so there are 5 or 6 questions about that. And I think that compilation of group of questions is where I was most interested in, and the results from that.
So, how do people feel about unlimited doe harvest?
They like it. We still are struggling to get them to shoot more, and that's going to be difficult. I'm looking at that data right now. That survey closed. It was very popular. We had about 9,000 people take it. It's a lot of data for me to kind of peruse through. 47 questions is a lot, and so we're really just kind of digging into it right now. It's going to take a back burner now that this season's in, but we'll really pour over that and run our analysis this winter.
9,000, is that about 10% of the deer hunters out there? Do you have a grip on that? What are those numbers?
We estimate we have anywhere from 275,000 to 300,000 deer hunters in the state.
But still a representative sample?
Oh, yes, very much so. We were very happy with that response. It was open-ended, so residents and non-residents both could take it. And right out of the gate, we asked them if they deer hunted in Kentucky last year or within the last 5 years, and if they said no, we thanked them for their input, and that was it. So we wanted to talk specifically to folks who hunted deer in Kentucky. And so we feel good about the breakdown of resident and non-resident. It's pretty reflective of the licensed buyers that we have, so it's good.
What came up on that survey maybe that surprised you?
We asked a question, I think, that surprised me about folks who take their deer to a processor. We We do a lot of our work with processors to try to get age data from our deer. And I was curious how many actually processed deer themselves or actually took them to a processor. And we asked them, do you take deer to the processor, yes or no, or maybe? And then we asked them, do you only take an antlered buck or an adult deer, but a young deer you butcher yourself? And it was really neat to see that. It appears that most of our hunters, the majority of our hunters, process deer themselves.
Processors oftentimes will come up with Hunters for the Hungry, being able to take that extra doe and donate it to a good cause. How's the Kentucky Deer Program working in tangent? Is it still a pretty good partnership?
Yes, I'm actually on the board of Hunters for the Hungry and very involved with them. In the last couple years, we've seen an increase in our funding. Funding is the biggest issue for us. If we don't have the funds to pay for processed deer, then we can't allow the hunters to donate their deer for free.
And does it have to be done by a processor?
In Kentucky, no. There is a statute that just changed a few years ago that said that venison given to food pantries does not need to be inspected by the USDA. So that allows us to take deer and work with processors that are not USDA inspected processors and then turn that around to food banks and food pantries.
Hunters for the Hungry. Let's talk more about that on the other side of the break. Fishing Report is standing by, and then more with the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife's Gabe Jenkins as the state sportsmen, women, and children prepare for deer season, with Modern Gun opening on November 12th. Gabe is our guest for the rest of the hour, so stay put. You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. We're back on Kentucky Afield Radio. If you'd like to share this show with someone, maybe you know someone who missed it, would like to hear it, or you'd like to share it on Facebook or email the link to someone who loves deer, it's easily done. Just go to our Facebook page and in the search box, put in Kentucky Afield Radio. You can like us there. You can also find us on YouTube. Kentucky Afield Radio in the search box will find our show. In fact, a long list of them. Plus, we're an iTunes podcast. You'll find us every week. More with Gabe Jenkins. First up, though, our fishing report.
In western Kentucky, down at Kentucky and Barkley Lakes, we're looking at that fall transition time. Fish are starting to move up out of the deep water. You got some fish scattered along the adjacent flats to your secondary channels, and you've got some fish, bass mostly, starting to move up shallow, feeding on shad. Some topwater baits, slow-rolling spinnerbait up around the bushes and trees that you find shallow, where those small shad are and the bass are feeding, and you've still got deep water fishing out on your ledges with some creature baits, worms and lizards. For crappie, they're still mainly being caught out deep, spider rigging with jigs. The water temperature's running about 71 degrees. We need it to cool down a little bit more for those crappie to move on up shallower. And just be safe out there. Like I said, the lakes are low this time of the year. This is Paul Reister, and I hope you find a good day to go fishing.
This is Jeff Crosby with the Central District Fishing Report. Water temperatures in the area are running in the mid-60s. Largemouth bass fishing is good at many of Central District lakes, especially at Taylorsville, Harrington, Gist Creek. It's a great time of year to get out and cast jerk baits and crate baits for a few bass. Concentrate your efforts on main lake points as well as secondary points and creek arms. Crappie are still good at many of our area lakes such as Harrington, Taylorsville, Beaver, Elmer, and Bolts Lakes. Crappie are being caught on live minnows and crappie jigs. Trout have been stocked at many of our area water bodies across the district, such as the Floyd's Fork, Big Bone Lick, as well as many of the Fins, Program Ponds, and lakes have been stocked with trout. Remember to dress appropriate when fishing in cooler weather, and always wear your life jacket.
Hi, this is Eric Cummins with your Southwest Kentucky Fishing Report. Barren River Lake drawdown is underway. Bass have been fair on lipless crankbaits, spinnerbaits, topwaters, and jigs. Crappie have been good on brush piles and laydowns or on structure. Bluegill and bite have been good on shallow brush and structure with live bait. Barren River tailwater activity is picked up with the drawdown with crappie hybrids and catfish fair, fishing those channel breaks. At Green River Lake, the lake is still turning over from Lone Valley, Corbin's Bend down to the dam. Bass and crappie have been best above those areas. Muskie good on topwaters, spinnerbaits, and crankbaits in the backs of coves and in feeder creeks. As always, good luck and good fishing. Be sure you wear your life jacket.
is wildlife biologist Gabe Jenkins. We have fun with Halloween, but let me tell you something serious. Bats, owls, snakes, we might call them scary nighttime creatures, but the one animal you should fear is deer. November is deer mating season, when deer are most active. Bucks are chasing does, and like a ghost, they can appear out of nowhere and dash right in front of your vehicle. So, be wise behind the wheel while nature runs its course.
A few seconds for safety from the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Uncle Chuck, what is fall?
Fall means football, but excitement doesn't end there. This is when Kentucky's outdoors are just getting started. The Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife reminds you lakes and streams are alive with fall fishing. And for many, the biggest game of the season is white-tailed deer. Get your fishing and hunting license and get your game plan together. This fall, take aim on a winning season at fw.ky.gov. We're back in our second half hour on Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Charlie Baglan. Are you deer hunting this fall? I hope you do. It's a great sport. It keeps our wildlife heritage alive and not just somewhere in a history book. It's a service that you are providing, too, for your community to keep those deer numbers in check. After all, there are no wolves, there are no mountain lions to do it for us anymore in Kentucky. Gabe Jenkins leads the deer program in our state. He is also on the board of Kentucky Hunters for the Hungry, which is an option to donate a deer for those in need.
Right, so we solicit funds and try to raise monies to pay the processor. So we pay the processor X amount of dollars for each deer that they process, and we can afford to pay for this many deer at your processing plant this year. And then they'll take all those, and then some processors will continue to pay to take deer and process it free of charge. Some of them will say we won't take them, but if the hunter wants to pay that fee, they can. We are limited on the number of deer we can process by our funds.
So you're seeking contributions?
Always and all the time.
And what's the easiest way to do that? Should someone say, hey, I'll help?
Yeah, if you're interested, you can get on Kentucky Hunters for the Hungry's website. We have a Facebook page, and there's a place for you to donate now. To donate, we are a 501c3, and all that's you can be written off on your taxes. So we appreciate any and all of your help. If you don't want to give financially, just donating a deer is really huge for us. We try to strive to make sure that the venison that's donated, we try to make it go back to the local community. So, if you're in a certain county, we try to make that meat go back to that county if possible, if the need is there. If the need is not there, we push it all across the state and try to get to the families and the folks that are in need of it most.
Hunters for the Hungry, a great thing. What's that website again?
kyhuntersforthehungry.info.
.info. I've not heard of that.
Yeah.
kyhuntersforthehungry.info. You have done very well, Gabe, and I guess you can take credit for it, but you can most likely thank Quality Deer Management and the hunters around the state for this becoming more and more a Boone and Crockett destination.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is the place.
Yes.
People like to come here now to hunt deer. This is the great time to be a deer program coordinator for Kentucky, isn't it?
It is, and it's really a heyday for our hunters. We hear a lot about back in the day. Well, back in the day is today for deer hunters in this state. So it's really amazing the quality of the deer that are coming out of the state, the opportunity that our hunters have right out their back doors. It's fantastic.
Last season, there were 55 taken over 40 different counties.
Mm-hmm.
Not bad. Do you generally see them clustered?
That 40 is more common, and they're all across the state. Back in the 90s when we talked about Boone and Crockett production and Boone and Crockett animals here, 160 inches of antler or bigger, we saw that in the central western part of the state, the Green River regions. That's changed. I get all kinds of calls, people asking me, where can I go shoot a big deer? And my answer to them is any county in this state. 3 or 4 years ago, we shot 4 Boone and Crocketts out of Whitley County. Whitley County is one of the most rugged counties we have, and some of the worst deer habitat we have, and there were 4 Boone and Crockett animals come out of there. It's really amazing where these deer are coming from. It shows me that our hunters are passing on them. There's good nutrients on the ground. They're healthy, and things are really good right now for Kentucky hunters.
This was over 40, so you had 15 coming from 40 counties, so there were some multiple takes in some counties. Owen County among them?
We might have taken one in Owen County last year. I know we've taken a few recently up there.
I say that because when they say you want a big buck, you want good hunting, you go to Owen County. You got plenty there.
And there are lots of deer in Owen County. Owen County has led the way in harvest, I think, since we started deer hunting. I mean, it's just a deer mecca. It's fantastic deer habitat, and it's a very, very popular place to deer hunt.
Do you expect as many Boone and Crockett's this year?
Good question. Boone and Crockett production is what it is. I've not been able to really pinpoint what it will do. It's been up, it's been down. You know, we're seeing 30 to 40 to 50 deer each year. I don't know. I look for this pace to continue, and so what it will do this year, I'm not sure.
Well, isn't somebody going to call you and say, hey, if you impose a little antler restriction here and there, maybe we could have more Boone and Crockett's?
You could, but it goes back to what's the goal of the agency, and we provide opportunity.
I like the goal of the agency. that makes sense. So far this year, how's harvest look?
Harvest was really good opening week in September. It was cool. We set a record opening weekend harvest in September. Then it got hot. If you think of September, we saw a slight decline in our September harvest, and then October comes around. It was pretty hot in early October, and then acorns start falling, and that really changes the dynamic of the deer herd. They've then switched from eating grass and browsing to now eating acorns. And you as a hunter, if you're out there this month and you are not hunting over acorn trees, it could be feast or famine for you. You know, we're seeing our mass surveys are in all across the state, and we're seeing some pretty good acorn production, and hunters need to be thinking about that and where they hunt.
What's going to determine acorn production, mass production?
Weather, precipitation, temperature, all those play into it. What we're seeing this year, we have a very good crop of white oaks, and red oaks are not far behind. Our hickories and beech are a little below average, but as far as those oaks, and those are very important for whitetail especially, they're pretty good crop this year.
I know just based on mowing my lawn, it was a wet spring.
Yeah.
Is that going to bolster mass production?
It helps. Wet spring. We saw a lot of these oak trees are on a 2-year cycle. We didn't see many last year. It was pretty much no acorn production. And so when you see a lack of 1 year, you expect a decent to above average the next year usually. And that's kind of what we're seeing.
So what do you predict? I'll say this, I'm going to temper this by saying you are on record as saying we've got a really good season coming up.
If I had to predict what we're going to be looking like in January, I think we'll have a good season. I look for our harvest to come down a little bit. Just waving my magic wand, I think we might get back to where we were 3 or 4 years ago and shoot about 130,000. I'm just guessing because of the acorn production. However, with that being said, I'm not a weatherman. I don't predict the weather. And I'll go back to my previous comment. It all depends on the weather and those 10 to 15 days in November and that first week in November for our archery hunters. If it's good and nice and not a lot of wind, not rain and snow, and you're talking 40s and 50s in the days and 30s, upper 20s at night, we're going to see a lot of deer harvested in November.
Were you expecting about those numbers last year and it came out to surprise you?
I look at the harvest nearly every day with Telecheck. We have that abilities, and all of our hunters do on our website. And it just kept growing. We were setting records after records after record. And, I expected – I didn't know where the ceiling was, and we kept harvesting deer, and it was pretty awesome.
Well, the ceiling's about 800,000.
Right, yeah. Yeah, but if we get to 800,000, there'll be the call from my head at that point.
155,000 deer harvested last year. What percentage of that was bucks? You remember?
Oh, it was probably about 55% male, I'm guessing. 55 to 60% male.
There was something interesting the Department of Fish and Wildlife did an administration ago, that people would fish more if they had more places to go. And so hence comes this Fishing in Neighborhoods program. Mm-hmm. Same sort of thing as maybe people would hunt more if there were more places to go, if there was more access, more places to get out and actually get a deer. How's public hunting areas play into this?
It's very important. It's key. And our agency has really had a big push in the last 5 to 10 years on purchase of property, and we've purchased thousands of acres all across the state for more public hunting opportunities for our hunters. We are limited on funds. We are able to survive on sportsmen's dollars, and that budget only allows us to do so much. And so we try to provide the opportunity and buy the farms that we can to open up opportunity, but there's lots of things that we as an agency can need to be thinking about outside the box to get more hunters on private property to allow for places for deer hunting.
Here's a stat I got off the website. Fish and Wildlife here in Kentucky has 80 wildlife management areas across the state. Those are for public use. And some require a user permit. They have quota hunts there, have some special regulations regarding deer hunting. Are any open for modern gun?
Yes, many of our areas are open for modern firearm. My best advice is for you to get on our website, fw.ky.gov, or pick up the most recent copy of our hunting guide, and you can go to that wildlife management area's information page, and it will tell you what is open and what is not for deer hunting. So you just have to look and see what there are, see what those restrictions are for that area.
So let's say I'm on your website and I want to find out where wildlife management areas are. We call them WMAs.
Correct.
And where will I find that, under which tab?
All right, you go to the Maps tab, upper right-hand corner, select that, and there'll be all of our different maps. You can go to wildlife management areas at that point, click that. It'll have the list of all of those areas, and you can pick that, and it'll have all the restrictions there.
Deer populations in Zone 2 and 3 counties are considered close to ideal. But the whole state isn't. If you had to classify the whole state as a Zone 1, 2, 3, or 4, what do you think it would be?
It would be a 2 or a 3. I would say probably a 2.
So the state is basically where you want it, even though there's some hot spots here and there and some places that need to be bolstered some.
Yes.
So you've had some zone changes. Marion County, for example, has moved up.
Mm-hmm.
Anywhere else?
All right, 3 counties last year. We changed Marion, Hardin, and Webster counties.
From what to what?
Marion went from a Zone 3 to a Zone 2. Hardin and Webster went from a Zone 2 to a Zone 1.
So we need some extra harvest out there in some spots. The Zone 4 counties, southeastern Kentucky, my bet.
Yes. Mostly southeastern Kentucky, some reaching up into the northeast section and around the Knobs area. But most of them are in the southeast part.
We'll be back to wrap up the discussion on white-tailed deer as our modern gun deer season is just ahead, November 12th. Stay with us. You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. Back with our final few minutes with Gabe Jenkins on Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Baglan. Modern gun deer season opens statewide November 12th. Archery season is open as we speak. Crossbow, muzzleloader just ahead, plus free youth weekend. New Year's weekend. Great way to start the new year. Much of the information we're covering is in the latest issue of the Kentucky Hunting and Trapping Guide. It's on your phone or on your PC. Just go to fw.ky.gov, or you can pick it up wherever you buy your hunting license. It's absolutely free. I like to have a few of these, Gabe, just floating around in the truck.
I keep boxes of hunting guides in my truck because I'm always passing them out. Yeah,
you can use them to swat flies, swat a dog. We had a commercial for the Kentucky Afield cap. And said it's great if you want to just sit it in the seat beside you to hold your French fries.
That works.
Yeah, you gotta. What do you use a cap for? To hold your keys, to hold your French fries, swat flies, and swat dogs.
Yeah.
And a lot of this will apply to the hunting guide.
Exactly.
You have to have a few. Advice for new people: you want to recruit new hunters to come into the fold this season and every season. What is your advice to have a mentor out there to take someone? It doesn't have to be a child.
Mm-hmm. Correct. There, like we talked about earlier, there are lots of what I would call non-traditional folks getting back into hunting. So people that had never hunted, they're in their 30s and 40s or older. Some that hunted as a kid and got away from it, and now they're able to get back out and hunt. So my biggest thing is try to hook up with a mentor. If not, we have some programs that we're launching as an agency that try to mentor hunters, that try to teach you the the basics of hunting and scouting and preparation and for deer hunting, and those are all good. And hunters, this is really a plea or a charge to our hunters, is that, take somebody hunting. It doesn't necessarily need to be a kid. And don't just take them once. They need to go out multiple times. When you think about who introduced you to hunting, it wasn't a one time, here's how you do it, good luck. And it really takes a effort from our hunters that are over multiple seasons and multiple advice to guide a hunter, to mentor them and encourage them, because it can be difficult and hard to know what you're doing sometimes. So be a good voice, be a good advocate for the industry and for hunting.
One thing that's going to help anybody do anything, I don't care what it is, shooting, basketball, what, is having success.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to go out there and be a failure or find that it's more difficult or it's cold. Go out there and you're a failure, guess how many more times you're going to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe not start out with deer hunting. Start out with squirrel.
I mean, that's a lot of folks, and me included. I cut my teeth essentially on how to hunt by small game hunting. I learned how to sneak through the woods and be quiet and identify game and get close. And that's, those were all the challenges on squirrel hunting. It was fun. It taught me how to be a hunter, to read the sign and spend time in the woods. And then that easily applies to hunting other species. So some people like to jump right in deer hunting, and that's fine. And there are others that like to go small game hunting or rabbit hunting and get introduced that way and then try other things. So, as hunters, there are some folks that like to hunt all the different species. Some are just strictly deer or small game, and you'll find what you enjoy and where you get the most pleasure out of by trying all of them if you can.
You could just go and watch.
Yeah.
There's nothing that says that you have to pull the trigger. You can go and watch how deer are scouted, and you can go out in advance and put that tree stand up and take it slowly, baby steps.
Right. And you learn so much from just being in the woods and watching the animal or the game that you're pursuing, how they behave, how they move across the landscape, what they're eating. So anytime you can get out, whether you're hunting or not, and observe them in their natural state is good. It makes you a better outdoorsman and a better hunter. Let's
talk about one thing before we close. We had a commercial on here that talks about scary animals of Halloween. You want to talk about snakes and black cats and bats and owls and these things that frighten the tar out of you?
Right.
And I said, now here's the script, Gabe, and it has to say the scariest animal you need to watch out for is deer.
Right. So, with the peak of breeding era and when our deer season goes on, the deer are on the move. They're on the move 24/7, moving everywhere. And that automatically equates to high deer vehicle collisions across the state. So our motorists need to be aware, whether you're a hunter or you're not a hunter, that in November, especially those first couple weeks, that deer are out on the landscape and they are not paying attention to vehicles. So, slow your speed a little bit at night. Be aware of your surroundings. If it's your frequent areas as you drive on your commutes to work or back and forth from places you like to go, be thinking about where you see deer and keep that in mind, and just be cognizant of that early November.
Is this evening hours only? Could it be any time?
It could be any time. Evening hours, right at daylight or right at dark is your more common times, but when we're in the middle of the rut during the breeding season, deer are on their feet and moving nearly 24/7, so it's not unheard of to see deer out or getting hit on the road in the middle of the day.
People have told me, said deer are the animals that see best when human beings see the worst. They have pretty good eyesight at twilight and dawn and dusk, but we drive down the roads and we turn on our lights, doesn't really help.
Correct.
Yeah, that time of the day.
A lot of times they're feeding alongside the road. Sometimes they're just walking right across the road. So,
and if there's one, there may be more.
For sure. Just because you see one, and I've talked to a lot of motorists, and it's happened myself, is I didn't hit the deer that I saw. It was the deer that was behind it that I did not see.
Singing with your kids in the car is one way to keep deer hazard season in mind. And so you got your eye out for these. If you have deer whistles on your car, does that help?
Science has proven it does not help. Some people will swear by them. Some people think it helps. If you think it helps or you want to give it a try, by all means put it on there. But usually by the time they hear it, you're too close anyways.
Yeah, you're right. So rut season Is it going on now here toward the end of October? When's it start? When's it end, the deer breeding season?
The majority of our breeding is in November. However, we see a little bit of breeding go on in October, December, and January. So
by Thanksgiving, should it be pretty much wrapping up?
Yep. Yeah, the November rut's usually over by Thanksgiving.
Well, Gabe, thanks a million. If there's anything else, say her now, but we'll have to close the show. I sure appreciate you coming out.
Thanks for the opportunity. Glad to be on.
Good luck this season.
Thanks. Good luck hunting to all our hunters out there, and I wish you a successful year.
And don't forget that Hunter Orange. Gabe, thanks for coming by again. We're out of time. This is Charlie Baglan inviting you to join us in a week, and we'll go inside outdoors again here on Kentucky Afield Radio.